WolfPunch.
Zane, you're the moderator. You say it.
I'm the moderator. What? Say WolfPunch? Why do we say it?
You don't have to say WolfPunch. You just say, "Hey, everybody, welcome to WolfPunch."
I didn't realize that we were starting that right now. Because usually we talk before. But yeah, okay. Anyway, hey everybody. If you haven't figured out, we're WolfPunch.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Who's here, Zane?
I think Yezin's here. Kyle Miller.
Yo.
Dan Hines.
Yeah.
Michael Kemp. Who? And me. I'm Zane Parmiter.
Yeah.
I just wanted to correct you, actually.
I'm Grover.
Yes.
Anyway, what?
I'm not here.
No, he's here.
I'm not.
He's here.
No.
Guys, he's here. Today we are talking about a movie I have not seen at all.
But the rest of us have seen.
Yes.
The rest of us did our homework for
Yes,
the week.
that's true. Hostiles. Or Hostels?
Hostiles.
The sequel to Eli Roth.
Yes, yeah.
There's already a hostel.
Now there's two hostels to stay at.
Starring Christian Bale
And Rosamund Pike.
and
Scott Shepherd?
The ginger kid from Breaking Bad.
Yeah. No eyebrows.
Jesse Plemons. Who's the Adam Beach?
Adam Beach is barely in it. That's true.
Yeah. Stephen Lang's in it?
Stephen Lang is in it. He looks completely different from his time in Tombstone. Now we're just talking about actors.
Which one was he?
That's true, we are.
He was Ike in Tombstone.
Right.
I never seen Tombstone.
Oh, you've never seen
No.
Tombstone?
I've never. This is the first Western
So
I've seen.
Wait, are you kidding me?
Ever?
Probably.
Then no wonder you didn't mind it.
Are you fucking
You
kidding
don't have
me?
any frame of
Probably.
reference.
Yes.
all right, hold up. We're
What the fuck?
WolfPunch, and one of us has just seen their first ever Western,
I guess.
and it was Hostiles. Hostiles.
Hostiles.
All right.
Yeah.
I mean,
Hostiles
whatever.
is the story of Christian Bale, who plays what is he exactly,
he's an army captain.
an
Yeah.
army captain out west?
I love how Zane knew that and he hadn't seen it.
Well, I'm looking at IMDb.
Yeah, you should just read the plot summary.
Yeah, it says in 1892, a legendary army captain reluctantly agrees to escort a Cheyenne chief and his family through dangerous territory.
There.
Legendary army captain Christian
Joe
Bale.
Blocker.
Christian Bale.
Joe Blocker is actually the name. A movie. How do
Sure
you guys feel about it?
It is very much a movie, yes.
Yes. Good job.
very
Great
good.
review.
I will say, based off of a little that I know, the trailer looked cool.
The trailer looked great.
The trailer
I saw the
looked
trailer
cool.
over the summer, and then since then have been telling everybody that would get in within 2 feet of me.
Yeah.
Ooh, I'm looking forward to Hostiles.
You know what's funny?
3 podcasts, I'm pretty sure. You
3
said.
podcasts
Yeah,
I've just been talking about.
Hostiles.
So Kyle, do you need to remake your top 5 list from 2017 now?
You know what? No, I don't. Maybe after listening to us talk about our top 5, I started to rethink. Maybe I didn't have it quite nailed.
That's
but
not what we're talking about.
Hostiles would not be on there.
No. It would not.
It was
Not very close.
a colossal disappointment for me.
Wow.
I thought it was good.
Well, Michael, you've never seen a Western before, have you? So
I mean, you saw Logan, that's
That
kind of.
Yeah,
It's a
okay.
superhero Western.
Yeah. At least my first Western wasn't like Ridiculous 6 or whatever.
Oh my
You haven't seen
god.
The Hateful Eight?
No.
All right, Michael Camp, since this is your first Western ever, what are your impressions? How did you feel about it? What did you like about it?
Well, from what I know of Westerns, I'm assuming part of the reason Kyle didn't like it is because it didn't feel like a Western. It felt more like...
oh, it felt like a Western.
I don't think it was sad enough for Kyle. That's fine.
That's
I'm sure
true.
It had probably Western...
Misery
some
loves
things,
company.
And obviously the time period it takes place in, but I don't know, something felt off for me that didn't make me think, oh man, this is a great Western.
Because it started Batman.
Yeah, that might
No.
He did really good.
He did very good.
Yeah.
And Christian Bale and Ben Foster, who were both in this movie, were in 3:10 to Yuma.
Yeah.
So going into this movie, I didn't know anything about it except that it had Christian Bale and Rosamund Pike. Those are the only things I knew.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
does.
it does.
Yeah, and
There go all the women.
yeah,
Sorry, go ahead. They're not.
There were never any.
there they both go.
Yeah.
But no, I mean Rosamund Pike, obviously. But I think what you're picking up on saying that it doesn't feel like a Western is it's not like it doesn't have like a lot of standard, like it doesn't have cowboys and like saloons and a shootout at dawn. It's not.
There weren't any
It's
wars.
It's not the Shanghai Noon. It's not like a Shanghai Noon style.
Disgust me that that's your frame of reference for Western.
Hold
No,
on.
I mean,
Shanghai Noon is a great film.
It is
You
a
better
great-
take this back.
it is a wacky run. While we're on the subject, though, of not having any female listeners, I would like to give a special shout out to Chelsea Schumann, who's our listener of the week, for liking everything that we post.
Hey, there we go.
You're the only one that does, and you're our favorite.
Number one fan.
Yeah.
One day we'll have her on the podcast. Maybe.
No girls allowed.
yikes.
This is a He-Man Woman-Hater Club,
Yes.
so...
I prefer Gross.
What?
Gross, Captain and Hobbes.
Oh, yeah.
All right,
Turn Alan.
all right, Masters of the Universe. Well, let's get back on topic. So you didn't say it didn't feel like Western. Well, what did you like about it?
I mean, like I said, the performances I thought were all pretty solid. I liked everything up until the end, to be honest. I liked like the journey, like it felt really like Lord of the Rings type, like we have a quest, almost like you had those nice vistas and
the
walking
vistas.
and
It was.
There's a lot of walking, so it made you think of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
But no, I liked
There are
all the
there's
things
a lot
that
of
were
walking in that.
I disagree.
Yeah.
They were on horseback for most of
Well,
it.
I felt
But-
bad for the one person who had to walk for a little bit after they picked up.
I did notice
the
that.
girl. I was
She
like,
did
oh,
have
why
to
she
walk.
have
She
to
didn't
walk?
have to walk. No one was even a gentleman and be like, did you
That's what I was
switch out?
thinking. I mean, I get she was a prisoner, kind of, but I mean,
Still.
still.
Yeah.
Still rude.
Yeah.
Right.
But-
So
God, I love horses. You ever notice, like, whenever they're just walking along, they look like they're agreeing with everything that you're saying? The way their head
Oh
nods.
my god!
What a good friend.
Jesus Christ!
Anyway,
Oh my god.
I mean, I liked the,
You're so lonely.
Michael kept move it.
Yeah,
I
sorry.
liked that, I liked the kind of almost, it honestly could have been broken up into episodes. Almost it was like, they went on a journey, it'd be like,
The pacing was kind of stop go. It would set
Yeah,
something up,
and
and
I
then it would be
like that
resolved.
about it. I can see people maybe not liking that about it, but I've also been watching a lot of Dragonball, so there's like that kind
Of course.
There's a lot.
what are these? So for you, this is a Western.
That's like Lord of the
That's
Rings,
Lord of the
like
Rings
Dragon
meets
Ball.
Dragon Ball.
Yes.
Oh my god, this is the wackiest review I've ever heard.
All right.
on
This is our worst episode yet.
All right.
I mean, when I was talking about this last night, I was comparing it to the John C. Reilly movie Walk Hard, and I feel like that's a little bit more legit than saying Dragon Ball.
What
reminds
happened to
me
the
of
adventure?
Oh,
It's like
man.
an adventure.
Sure, okay.
That's
Why
what
do
it
we-
feels like.
How is adventure?
All right, so Dan,
Death March almost.
How is it like Walk Hard? I mean, the director who made this did the serious movie that Walk Hard is the Walk the Line.
No, he didn't.
He didn't.
No, James Mangold, who directed Logan, directed Walk the Line.
Didn't you say that?
He did Into the Furnace.
In the Furnace.
Yeah, he also did Black Mass. So now I just don't get Scott Cooper.
Oh yeah.
That's the only other movie I've seen by him was Black
Bad
Mass.
Mm.
So both of these feel like this is a guy who has seen a lot of good movies and is trying to make one.
So
Actually,
you try to make a movie.
yeah, that's pretty
Yeah.
accurate. Yeah, I would agree with that.
That's hilarious.
If you've seen Into the Furnace, it's similar in like tone a lot to this film, and it really edges closely to what you might want to call despair porn, and it's just like no one gets to be happy ever the entire film.
See, I have to watch that one. I've heard that it was good.
Well, yeah, if you just you love sad shit.
I do love
It
sad
doesn't matter. But this one had Hostiles had a bit more of a catharsis to it in the ending, which we'll get to eventually. I don't need to jump right into spoilers right away. But coming back to a comment about why it reminded me of Walk Hard, it was really just the opening scene of the film. I don't know if for those of you who haven't seen Walk Hard, there's like the beginning where like it's him as a kid playing with his young brother, and they're like, "Ain't nothing bad gonna happen today, do it?" And they're down on the farm, they're being dumb kids doing stupid stuff, and then one of them accidentally kills the other one with a machete.
Oh, he has.
He has.
And then he dies. Yes, he's on he dies.
Look, you're not wrong. He does kill him, but we say half.
He dies as a complication due to having. Due to being half.
Due to having not his lower half.
But no,
But the whole setting of that, because like it sets it all up like, oh, it's gonna be a great, fun, goofy day, and that's exactly what the first scene of Hostiles kind of struck me as.
Yeah,
Because
Mom's teaching us about adverbs.
yeah, it's like Rosamund Pike.
Yeah.
It's like it's a family on the farm. You know, it's like the husband's outside sawing logs, and then Rosamund Pike's homeschooling her 2 daughters, and it's like, no, this is what adverbs mean. And both kids are just so excited to learn and just like so happy, and like it's
I
the
will
best
say-
day ever.
I was happy to get a refresher on adverbs. I desperately need that.
I mean, it's a very
Michael,
educational
just
movie.
watch Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
That's true.
Good point.
But yeah, the whole time, like all I could think of in my head is like, ain't nothing bad gonna happen today. And then like literally 30 seconds later,
Spoilers.
spoilers for the
It's the
first
opening of the
fucking
movie.
before you even
When the Comanche come running up, the fucking husband decides, I don't want to do well. And he takes his rifle and walks out of his house and starts shooting at them, walking up on like 4 guys on horses.
Why? Why would they do
Well,
that?
they were coming to like steal the horses and burn everything down. So he was like, "You take the kids and you go run, and I'll hold them off." But his idea of holding them off was abandoning
was
all
like
cover.
walk at them without
Yes.
cover and shoot
Yeah.
blindly.
And so I was immediately like, "I'm glad you're about to fucking die."
And he did.
You're an
That's
idiot.
good.
If I learned anything from this movie, it was that back then,
Hold
no
your
matter
baby
what,
better when you're running away.
but you can die from just about anything at any second, at any time, and there are people who are ill-equipped for that. That just kind of proved that he was someone who probably wasn't.
There's
gonna
this
make it
movie-
anymore.
I learned that everyone with a gun in the Old West loves Rosamund Pike as much as I do. Because they can hit everything but her. Whichever one of
Distracted
them.
by her beauty.
Yeah, no, they weren't. They just wanted to kill her whole family, and whichever one of them shot the baby that was in her arms without hitting her, definitely high-fived his friend.
Oh,
It
wow.
was like, dude, I got that fucking baby.
Oh, my God.
what are we talking
We're
about?
talking about the opening scene of
the movie
Hostiles.
where Rosamund Pike's
I know
family
that. I
goes
just-
down, and it's funnier than it should be.
Okay, so moving into
Yes.
the actual story of the movie. So that's the opening scene.
And it's
It's Rosamund
hilarious.
Pike is there, teaching her children, you know, how to English or whatever. Now, also, I didn't notice anyone else. I mean, I don't know as much about westerns as you do, Kyle. But I mean, the way they talk in the movie doesn't feel super westerny. It doesn't. It's a lot more modern.
Yeah, I
than
mean, that's
something like Bow and Tomahawk.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that
Or
that often
Deadwood.
fluctuates. Ones like Deadwood or Bone Tomahawk are usually like outliers. There aren't a lot of Western movies that have that.
I was actually. It's a small thing, but I was actually disappointed by
Yeah.
that. I felt like a movie like this really needed to feel authentic, like a little bit more authentic in terms of like
yeah,
having characters speak like they would in this time. Instead, they actually really just talk like modern day with the slightest tinge.
they got a little bit of a twang in
We're
there.
in that.
When they brought up Snapchat, it was really weird.
Yeah,
Yeah, just snap it to me later.
But yeah, so then that opening scene of Rosamund Pike having her husband and 3 children murdered kind of sets up the movie, and then you have Christian Bale who plays this army captain, and he's tasked with guiding this imprisoned what tribe?
Comanche.
no,
No,
it's
no.
Cheyenne.
Cheyenne.
The Comanches were fighting him. You don't
Right.
know nothing.
Well,
You didn't even watch the movie, fucker.
I don't know.
Right. So this
I
Cheyenne war chief,
Chief
by the name of
Yellowhawk.
Yellowhawk, he has to take him and
It's a
escort
sweet
him
name.
to his.
Sorry.
He has to escort him back to his homeland, or to his home
In Montana.
in Montana, because he's dying of the cancer.
Which I was surprised they knew what the cancer was, but
They knew what the cancer was.
They know about the cancer. Damn.
And so Christian Bale's character is he's been in so much war with Native Americans that he hates them, and he cannot stand doing this so much that after he's tasked with this, after they really have to push him to do it, and then there's a scene where he goes out into the middle of a field.
He just goes outside. God, that was also hilarious.
And he just starts screaming.
I feel like that just
He tries to dig a hole for a little bit, does a really bad job, and then keeps screaming and playing with his
And
gun.
playing with his gun.
Basically, the implication is that
I do.
he is so torn up about having to escort Yellow Hawk back to his home that he is about to kill himself.
Yeah,
rather than do this.
They do
Because
establish this, I would say, well in the film, and it really goes in depth. It's like, I fought against him. Like, here are all the men that like have died under my command.
Sure.
That have fought against him in war. So it goes to pretty great lengths to establish him that he's not a fan of Native Americans.
Yeah.
And anyway, it's actually really funny. Like the whole scene where he's talking to a superior officer, who's like handing him down the mission. He's like, I'm not fucking doing that. And he's like, well, we'll court martial. Like, go right the fuck ahead. I don't give a shit. He's like, well, we'll take away your pension.
Yeah.
It's like as soon as they mention money, he's like,
Doh.
also, just one other quick thing about that scene. Like, it was really great because, like, I think there were 3 separate occasions where he just started, like, Christian Bale's character starts to launch into a monologue, and the superior officer is just like, that's not important. It just cuts him off.
Yeah.
And it's hilarious.
Well, essentially in that scene, like, yeah, I mean, a man's got to eat, but essentially you have that scene, and there's Christian Bale who really hates Native Americans. Then there's the other guy who is sort of portrayed as like a liberal, like intellectual type who's talking about sort of like treating them as human and rights. And then there's the guy giving the orders who really doesn't care. He just has an order from the president. And anyway, the reason I bring all this up is
and there's a picture in the paper.
Yeah, there's pictures in the paper.
The reason I think the reason I'm bringing this up is that it sets up what the movie is. It's that Christian Bale's got to take this guy, he's got to escort him safely and his family, and he really doesn't like Native Americans, and he doesn't want to do this. And then pretty early on the way, you know, Christian Bale does this with a couple of his guys, including Jesse Plemons from Breaking Bad, and a couple other dudes. And then they start escorting them, and then they put them in chains while they're escorting them. And then pretty early on the trek, they run into Rosamund Pike, who has just had her entire family slaughtered by Comanche, which is a different tribe, but still Native American people. And so that sort of sets up the movie.
The wacky zany Dragonball adventure.
At that point,
Rosamund Pike is basically Bulma.
Native Americans died in Dragonball. Yeah.
Another Dragonball joke.
You haven't seen shit, Zane.
I haven't seen anything.
At that point, they do have to hunt down the Dragon Balls to wish back Rosamund Pike's family.
Oh, wow.
Well, fuck.
But they come back
I
wrong.
regret everything.
Anyway, well, about nearly 20 minutes into this review, I'm going to go ahead and say it. This is a very bad movie. I think we've joked a lot. It's really, this movie does not live up to any expectations.
Is that why Kemp likes it?
Yes.
I would not say it's a very bad movie. I would say it's an average movie for what it's trying to do, honestly. It's aiming for something higher than it has hopes of reaching by being like a really like gritty drama, social commentary on everything. And there's elements of that. There's elements of that that I think really work in it, but there's also just a lot of the unintentional humor, like we talked about in the beginning, and so much stuff that doesn't pan out the way it could have. There's just a lot of weird decisions in this movie that kind of baffle me. It seems like he's really good at setting shots, but he just kind of like doesn't care about what happens in those shots sometimes, I feel like.
Yeah, like, okay, like, it's not a terrible movie, but it was a huge disappointment for me. It has very beautiful cinematography, beautiful settings, just a gorgeous fucking movie to watch. The vistas, man. And it has a really, really talented cast. Christian Bale does a damn good job in the movie.
Absolutely, yeah.
How does he... Okay, this seems weird. How does someone do really well in a bad movie? Like,
okay,
he was the problem,
let me give you an example. Okay. There's a scene where one of his soldiers is injured, and he's going to stay at this fort and not complete the mission with him. So then they have like a scene where they say goodbye to each other, and they're both like crying, like, and he's trying really hard not to cry while talking to him, and the acting in that scene is great.
Oh, okay.
And it would be a really good scene, but we just are banking off of knowing like, oh, well, they've served together a long time. We don't see the characters interact a whole lot.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of like setup for that scene. It's just like a good moment in there.
They could have had that scene with any other character on the journey in their unit, and it would have made a difference.
But they had it with the black guy to show that he's not racist in this time.
He's just
against Native Americans.
Yeah, just against Native Americans.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, I guess saying it's very bad is kind of all a matter of perspective. I think it's very bad, not in the sense that it's bad like The Room, not in the sense it's bad like like a B movie. I think it's bad in the sense that it misses everything it's going for. Everything the movie sets out to do, I think it fails to do.
I would disagree with that on some counts, but
I think, well, like if you look at this movie, and Kyle, you said this, I think it sums it up pretty well. This movie would be kind of good if it came out in 1985.
Yeah, it feels like the first draft of a script somebody wrote 30 years ago.
Of like Dances with Wolves.
Yeah, because it's not very like socially contemporary. It's also not on any level really. There's a lot of dialogue of like, I've killed babies and women and men, and after a while you don't feel anything. Well, I just killed my first person and I don't want to feel nothing. And it's like, it's dialogue that you've kind of just heard before and are not impressed by anymore. It's just, in this movie, it's shot really well.
Yeah.
It's a Western that doesn't push the genre further.
Sure.
And is also like, and we'll get into this as we go further along, but there have been so many Westerns made way earlier that are better than this. Unforgiven is a primary example of like, Unforgiven starts off as just like a typical Western, but like a little grittier, and then it becomes like a deconstruction of violence in the Western genre. This movie does not do that. Like Christian Bale's character is kind of similar in that like he's killed women and children, and he's been a soldier massacring people, and he kind of likes doing it. But the entire time, everyone in the movie is telling him, "You're a good man." And he never really has to come to terms with anything that he's done.
Sure.
Not to the extent that Clint Eastwood does in Unforgiven.
Sure.
You know, it's just not a very like contemporary Western, except for visually.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was shocking.
Yeah, I mean,
one more. It's just sorry. So there's this movie called Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country, right? Where I won't get into it, but it was basically like the Starfleet and the Klingons were suing for peace and they have to work together, and Kirk doesn't like the Klingons, but he's got to escort the ambassador, and it was like a whole thing. And like, I like these two-sided...
so wait, this movie is just a rehash of
It's Dragon Ball, Star Trek, it's everything. I'm just saying, like, I was interested in seeing a movie with like two enemies taking this journey together, and like this movie was completely one-sided. This movie could have been way, way more interesting if you would have gotten, like, more of Yellowhawk's perspective or his family, and you just don't get it at all.
Wow.
Like, they don't have very much dialogue in the entire movie. They hardly do anything except be like, we could help. Fuck you, we don't want your help. And then they help. And then it's like, all right, fine, you can help. It's like, you just don't get any of their side, and it's really weird. The movie would have just been fleshed out more. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
So essentially, the arc of this movie is that Christian Bale is this guy who starts off hating. Like we're getting into spoiler territory now. Christian Bale is this guy who starts out, or what's his name, Captain Blocker.
Yeah.
He's this guy who starts out. He really hates Native Americans, and then on his journey taking Yellowhawk back to his home, he gains like a respect, and I'd even call it like admiration for this guy who was his enemy. And Rosalind Pike is this woman who at the beginning, her family are slaughtered really by Comanches.
What was that?
Come on.
Comanches.
Pretentious
and
fuck.
then
Drink your Fiji.
anyway, her family is slaughtered by Comanches, and then at the beginning she's terrified of just the sight of Native Americans, and at the end she also gains to like love and respect these people. It's the most it's essentially like the most straightforward possible story they could have done with this setup.
Except you don't really see them get there. The movie just decides, you knew that that's what we were going to do.
It's the most straightforward possible story they could have done with this setup. And again, that's why I say, 1985, this would be something new. Now this is like really ground we've tread before, and I would even go so far as to say that the movie has a bunch of different plots that they could have done, that could have diverged from this, that they never do. So you're watching it and you're thinking, no, it can't be so simple as they just have to survive together and get to this place. Something else has to kind of spring up out of this like intense hatred that these people have for each other. And it's like, no, It doesn't. And so you're left with this really by-the-book movie that really does feel like it has seen better movies and is trying to be them without really understanding what made any of those better movies better.
Yeah.
Like Maverick.
I do like Maverick, but no, different tone entirely.
Sorry.
So let's give a few examples here on why this movie, like Chekhov's gun, is firing blanks the whole time, because it could really, like, there are some interesting concepts introduced in this movie. Like I say, it's not a terrible movie. It's just it has a lot of potential that's not used. Eventually, they pick up Ben Foster's character, who they're taking to another fort to be hanged because he murdered like a family. And he was a soldier that served with Batman earlier and was saying, like, you've done all the same horrible things that I've done, so I'm just asking for mercy. I'm asking you to spare my life. And he goes on, like, this whole monologue about how, like, you've killed women and children, and I've seen you do it, and you're just as bad as I am. If anything, you're worse, because me and my friends, we did all of our shit for you. And there's a part where it shows Rosamund Pike laying in her tent listening to all of this. And I thought for sure, like, something's going to come of this. Like, next time he talks to her, she's going to have the realization, oh, like, you've killed families, and I had my family slaughtered. I know, like, you're just the problem with this world. You're just another side of it. Instead, she's like, do you want to sleep in my tent tonight? And I was like, what?
Do you want to bang?
Like, what just happened? You do not care at all having, like, it's just, there's just a lot of setups that keep happening in the movie and nothing comes from them.
Yeah, I think that comes back to, like, the pacing we were talking about before, how, like, it introduces these, like, plot lines you think may end up being, like, overarching for the film itself. Like, the Native Americans that slaughtered Rosamund Pike's family, like, they show up, like, 45 minutes later, and one of the other people sneak up in the night and kill him and hang him.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, they're gone, they're dead. And then after that, what is it, Ben Foster's character, that whole instance happens, and then, like, spoilers, he escapes, and then one of the guys goes down, tracks him, and kills him off screen. It's like, okay, that's over with.
And kills himself.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, kills himself. Well, he had a case of the melancholia.
Yes, he did.
He saw Lars von Trier
He
and
was-
just...
Kirsten Dunst is sad, and so am I.
Yeah.
See,
And
that
then...
was such a weird thing.
What was
Like,
so weird?
weird choice. Like, they just, like, because they, like, I think how you guys were saying, like, they kind of just grazed over. Like, they kind of, like, decided, like, oh, yeah, he's depressed, but they didn't, like, do a good job of conveying that to the audience.
I mean, it kind of was just there for the sake of, like, you know, he can try and function and be normal and, like, soldier on, and Christian Bale's character, like, so the movie's at the start, he's like, they're taking away my guns, I can't be a soldier anymore, I'm not fit for duty. And Christian Bale gives him the guns, he's like, I want you in this unit, you're coming with me. And, like, he's fine for, like, most of the movie until this, basically towards the end, was like, I got the melancholia. And he just kind of stares off into, like, the distance in one scene in the rain, and then the one dude escapes and he chases after him and kills him and kills
But I
himself.
feel like the movie should have done a better job of, like, maybe having something, we don't see what triggers it, it just kind of, which, I mean, could be how that could really happen in real life, but I mean, I feel like it just kind of came out, like, he mentions it, but then it comes out of nowhere. That he's like, okay, I guess I'm going to kill myself. And I was like, wait, what?
I mean,
it took me forever to figure out, like, it took them going back to his corpse twice for me to see the bullet in his head. I'm like, oh, he shot himself. Like, they didn't do a good job at, like, conveying, I think.
That he killed himself?
Yeah.
Oh, I got it, like, right away.
Yeah, I disagree.
Oh, okay. Well, like, what I did, what gave it away for me is, like, you see the hole in his head, and then you see the blood on his revolver.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, that came from where you're in their head.
I mean, going back to Chekhov's guns that didn't fire, I think the biggest Chekhov's gun that doesn't fire in this movie is basically hatred. The idea of hatred and vengeance is I know it's kind of abstract, but that is the Chekhov's gun that the movie plants at the beginning and then doesn't do anything with it. We spend an entire, like, basically the first 20 minutes of the movie is dedicated showing you why the two leads, which are Christian Bale and Rosamund Pike, would absolutely hate Native Americans. We spend the first 20 minutes showing you why they would have so much hatred. And Christian Bale, he almost kills himself rather than take this guy to his home. And Rosamund Pike, she is just terrified of these people, and she has so much, like, anger. And and to me, I'm looking at, oh, well, this is just an escort mission, and the thing that's buried in this mission that's bound to make it go wrong is the hatred. The fact that these people hate the people they're escorting, and then the people that they're escorting are also their enemies. And you think, how is this going to complicate the mission? How is this going to compromise everyone's safety? How could this just turn into a bloodbath? And it doesn't. At all. Only outside factors show come in and threaten the command chief. They become a problem and they fight with them. And then later, bandits. While the women are off collecting water, they kidnap them and then they rape them. So, it's off screen, but that happens. And then later, there's another group towards the end that doesn't want Native Americans on their land. So all of the threats are external. Even the guy that they bring, and also the guy that they bring that's a prisoner who's done something else. All the threats are external. Despite all of his hatred, Captain Blocker never does anything that really compromises the mission. And Rosamund Pike, despite her trauma, never does anything that compromises the mission, which destroys this movie. Because all of that just becomes a thing for them to get over off screen.
Yeah.
Well, they got over it so quickly.
Yeah.
Like, I thought the scene wherever the one Native American woman gives Rosamund Pike her clothes, I was like, oh shit, like she's gonna like spit at her and say like, no, I don't want that clothes.
Everyone's
gonna
show
like,
off.
oh sure.
You think because she's just the night before, or the day, like a day before, had her family killed by Native Americans. You think, oh, back then they thought they were all the same, so she would take this, she would spit on her, she would take this coat and burn it or something, but she doesn't do any of that.
She's like, it's fine.
Yeah. See, because like I thought going into this movie that like there was going to be an external threat that causes them to like band together and become good friends and stuff at the end, but I expected way, way more internal conflict in the movie. I mean, the tagline is like, "We are all hostiles," and it's like, no, you're not. Like,
no, it's just those other people.
It's just those other people.
The whole time I watched the movie, all I could think was like, the Hostiles was the wrong name for this movie.
Yeah,
because nothing felt hostile. Even the outside threats didn't feel that like hostile. It was just like,
but like you say, the beginning makes it feel like, yeah, this is going to happen because he's going on this big rant. I've got a war bag of reasons to hate him. And then he goes outside and he plays in the dirt and almost kills himself. And then as soon as they get out of sight of the fort, he's like, all right, let's put them in chains. Fuck this parade bullshit. And then he takes out a knife and he gives Yellowhawk a knife. And you're like, oh, some shit's going to go down. But then it doesn't. And
it never does.
And it never does. And Rosamund Pike, like she's insane. She's got the crazy eyes, and she's screaming and wailing, and you think like when she picks up a gun and starts shooting that corpse, you're like, maybe some trouble's gonna happen. She's not right in the head, but nothing happens.
I mean, early in the movie, she picks up a gun, and for a minute, I think, oh my god, she's gonna pick up this gun now, and she's gonna try and shoot Yellowhawk and his family in their tent. No. She just goes and walks it over and and almost killed herself. And then Christian Bale. White men made this movie. Let's just. I'm gonna throw that out there. I think the biggest.
Scott Cooper made this movie, and we know that because as soon as it cuts to black, it's his name.
Yeah.
Doesn't say the end. You would love this. As soon as the movie ends, it's a black screen, and then it just says Scott Cooper.
Yeah.
And then it says written and directed.
Yeah.
It is amazing.
Wow.
How fucking proud this guy was of his work.
Yeah. It's amazing how proud he is of the horse shit. Again, I'm being pretty hard on this movie, and now we're going to get into the real core reason. This is a movie made by white people who really don't, who think they care but actually don't care about depicting any of this as two-sided in any way. Because essentially the movie is about the two white leads. And when I say that, I mean it's about them and no one else. Everyone else in this movie
the other people that get the most screen time after them or the most dialogue or more of a story are all white people also.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But I'm just focusing on the fact that everyone really other than Rosamund Pike and Christian Bale in this movie is a prop. the Native American family that they're guiding aren't really. They're not rounded. They're secondary characters. They're not rounded in any way. They don't grow or change, or we don't really find out about their internal struggles.
Yeah.
Honestly, when I was looking at the potential for this movie is when I was thinking that, oh well, what if Rosamund Pike's insanity or Christian Bale's hatred ruins the mission? I was also thinking, what if General Yellowhawk or Chief Yellowhawk also isn't over it?
Yeah.
What if he is gonna? What if he's got something in the works himself?
It was like I was telling you last night. It was like when they decide to like help, like when they ask if they can help with the Comanches. It was like, why don't we see their side of it? Where like Adam Beach would be like, dude, I don't want to get like our whole fucking family killed out here because these like army people don't know what they're doing. And Yellowhawk could have been like, fuck him, I want American Psycho to die because we hate him. You don't see any of that. They're just like, how can we help? We can help. Let us help. And it's like,
Yeah, I mean, they're basically. It's like how they have like the black best friend trope, which is literally in this movie in the most egregious way. But it's how they have the trope of we're gonna have minority characters and they're mystical and they're kind and they're wise and they're like just there to help the white characters grow, and that's what they are. And I think the writer of this movie thought, but I made them really nice, so I'm depicting them in a good way, right? It's like, no, that doesn't count at all. You're just putting them in as props for Christian Bale's for Captain Blocker's story. He needs to learn to change and grow and forgive, and so at the end he can find happiness and redemption. That's what the story is about. The Native American characters are props. And then, I mean, the most obvious way we can point out that that's the attitude this movie takes is that Captain Blocker's supposed best friend character is, played by, I don't know the actor's name, but he's a black character, and they depict that, these guys have this huge friendship, but the guy has very few lines in the movie outside of his tearful goodbye with the main character. He has very little. He doesn't have an arc. He doesn't say much about his attitude towards anything. All he's there is to show that him and the main character are the best of friends, and that he thinks the main character is a very good man, and that means that the main character, he's not racist. He's just been through war with these people, but he doesn't have any of that. Anyway, the movie. The reason I say that is the movie has been, and some people. Or in some reviews I've read, the movie's been called a progressive Western. And I think, this is progressive in 1985. That's when this was progressive. Mm-hmm. So that is just a big aspect of the movie that I really, I didn't, going in, I wanted to I did not know anything about it, I wanted to like it, but then the more it went on, the more it just made clear that it's really just about these two characters. Yeah. It's not interested in giving the Native American characters a story or depth at all. They're just there to be see, they're a wise mystic people, and they acknowledge our main character's kindness. Yeah, and that's what they're there for, is to acknowledge other people's kindness and to reflect other people's growth. Even at the end, spoiler alert, at the end, all the Native American characters die except one kid. Yeah. Who Rosamund Pike then essentially adopts, and at the end, you think that at the end the main character, Christian Bale's character, is leaving them, and they're going to get on a train and go away.
In a scene that takes 50 minutes of slow motion.
Wow, you haven't seen the ending of Into the Furnace, man.
No.
Oh boy.
Yeah, that's a trend of his films. So that was quick.
Anyway, and so then as the train starts to embark, you just kind of close up on Christian Bale's face,
as he looks down his nose,
being all sad and dour as they're leaving, because they did this emotional goodbye scene that implies they're going to be okay, and they're tearfully saying goodbye to this man, this very good man who helped them, and he's going to go be alone because he can't get over the things he's done. And then, as the train starts to go, he just walks up, gets on the train, and goes inside.
It's you need to buy it.
It's like if you watched the end of The Searchers, and when John Wayne stands in the doorway and realizes that he's too much of a piece of shit to join their little family
Yeah.
life and he walks away. It would be like doing that, but then he just goes back in. And he's like, I don't want to be able
He's
to.
like, yeah, never mind.
That's what this movie does.
She's hot, and that's a nice kid. I'll be his dad now.
I would pretend to love him.
It's essentially what the ending is. The Native American characters, they don't get anything and they all die. That's all that really happens.
Please don't let this discourage you from watching more Westerns, because this was just not a good one. There are so many way better ones.
I mean, I enjoyed it enough that I'd like to check out some more Westerns.
All right, now you're talking.
Yeah.
Which ones do you recommend to
100 Ways to Die in the West.
Shut up!
Yes.
First of all, it's a million.
Watch that one.
Anyways.
Guys, Seth MacFarlane is an enemy of this podcast.
It's true.
Alan
He's
Jackson
not a listener,
sings the theme song of that movie. It's awesome. Just so you know. Country music, guys.
Shut up,
Sam
man.
has to put in his 2 cents.
That's true.
So you
I
didn't see the
didn't
movie.
see the movie, so now I can contribute.
Beady-eyed fuck.
Also, Doc Brown is in A Million Ways to Die in the West, which is great, because Back to the Future is awesome.
You know what's really cool? At the beginning of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, Sam Elliott is in there with like brown hair and no mustache, and it's incredible. It's super funny. He's just like right there in the opening scene. I thought I'd let everyone know.
Hostiles, though.
Hostiles. Not as good as that movie.
It really fell apart for me at the end. Whenever
Yeah, you were saying you
That,
didn't like
like-
the end. What didn't you like about
I
the end?
didn't like that.
Herschel wouldn't listen to reason.
Yeah, I'm just like, why can't you just bury them on like 2 feet off their land? Like, really have to get everybody killed? Like, really? Like, I get like standing up for principles, and those guys are being assholes. But like, the whole point of the journey was like to finish this mission, and he jeopardized the entire mission because he didn't want to just be like, okay, sure.
I think it was important to him that he be buried on that land.
Yeah, look
That was
at
the whole
you.
point.
You're taking the wrong fucking side. Why can't they just be like, we can go throw horseshoes somewhere else on our 400-acre property? Fuck you,
Yeah, I
Michael.
mean, it's not just like, oh, well, just don't
I'm
tweet
just
it
saying,
that
I
way.
feel
That's
like
when the property
I feel like
ends.
they died. Like they all could have been okay. That's like the frustration.
I understand.
I feel
It is sad.
I,
that, like,
I do think that they're wrong.
It's designed to be frustrating,
Yeah.
like in that way. I feel like, I just really stupid nitpick. I just wish he would have said like at one point, it's like you're seriously pointing a gun at like a U.S. officer, like with an order from the
Yes.
president.
Yeah.
And instead, he just like hands him a piece of paper, and it's like I don't care about paper. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, you really shouldn't, because anyone could have just drawn that. But yeah, I enjoyed parts of the ending, but I really feel like Christian Bale's character should have died at the end of it.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it is very much a story from beginning to end, and like I mentioned before, there's a bit more catharsis to him, but it did, especially with him being like, oh, I'm going to be, the Native American boy's dad now. It
gave him an obnoxiously happy ending.
It did. Like, you could tell, like, I mean, it tortured, his character was tortured. It, like, everything in the movie is just established to be, like, a reflection or a mirror of his own psyche and, like, what he thinks and how things could have gone or how they could go. And it doesn't follow through, I feel like, the way they should have on that. Like, he didn't die for the Native Americans. He didn't have that big change of heart. And it was just, it was just,
well, I think he would have. I think the only thing is,
I think he would have, but
he was
they
just
didn't
good at
show that.
but
Yeah.
but he's just better at killing. I think what it is that like
I liked when he knifed the guy.
they wanted to
Yeah.
show that he's willing to die for this cause, but we're gonna have it so that he doesn't, and all the other ones die for the cause because we don't care about them.
Yeah.
So he can have his cake and eat it too, basically.
Yes, exactly. They so he can have his cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
No, the movie has sort of honestly, in a movie like this, so just kind of background. Well, we watch this movie at the Gateway Film Center, or at least me and Kyle and some other people did.
Because we love you, Gateway.
And prior
Hardcore shout-out.
to the movie, they have like a bunch of like really art house type film trailers. So not like the standard trailers for films you would see at any movie, but it was kind of like artsy, kind of maybe a little bit pretentious in terms of like the kind of movies that are there. So going into the movie, I thought this is going to be like a really serious, not blockbustery, not pandering type movie at all. Yet the movie actually really pandered. I thought it was going to be a much more
Yeah,
serious,
Yeah.
a much more serious movie, and that's why I expected all of that inner conflict to just get everyone killed or get everyone.
For sure.
Instead, the movie just does like the just really obvious things, like, oh, we have two leads who are single. Let's have them have a romance. And so the movie actually spends a lot of time just like not I don't want to say like a will they won't they, but kind of like a will they won't they.
They're a real Sam and Diane
between Christian Bale and Rosamund Pike, where it's like, oh, he seems like a bit, but look how nice he is to her, and look how much she is now leaning on his strength.
Look at how dead her husband is.
and so then there's that moment where it honestly just the moment where right after she overhears that he's also like kind of a killer of women and children, where it's raining and then he comes to see if she's okay, and she invites him into her tent, and I'm like,
and then his other best friend whose beard is melting in the rain, and he's like at the end of his tether saying, I'm sad and I gotta go and I don't know if I can live anymore.
That's
He's
like
like,
weird tonal shit.
and he's just like, dude, calm down. I've got a fucking hot chick in my tent, so I'm not dealing with you right now.
Yeah. That was a really weird part to put that scene.
Yeah,
I was like, why is
literally
there someone standing there? Like,
interrupted
what's going on?
her inviting him to sleep in her
It was
tent.
like, pick
And I
one
mean-
or the other.
And I mean,
Like,
don't get me wrong. I get it. If Rosamund Pike invited me into a tent, I would let any of you kill yourselves because I don't care.
That's
but
true.
it's just I know that that's my flaw, and it's like it also reflects Christian Bale's character, so I can judge him.
Yeah, it's like so, and I think that's what the ending sort of panders to. It's like, well, and that's why they're building up that connection. It's like, well, at the end, we want them to be like a family. We want them to not only be together, but we want them to then raise this Native American boy whose family was killed because Christian Bale couldn't pull off this mission correctly, even though he couldn't pull it off out of no flaws of his own, but only external mistakes that other people
because he's a
made.
good man.
Yeah, well, he's a good guy's a good
man.
Guys, did you know that Captain Blocker is a good man? Because
I didn't know that.
he's a good man.
All those men and women, children he killed, it's fine. He was just following orders.
They wanted to die. You know what? He fucking drops that line in the movie, though.
Yeah, isn't
Yeah.
it?
God, there was just so many things that I expected to come up in this movie. It was just so tone deaf.
You know, they want to take away messages. It's okay if you were ordered to do it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not to get
If you uproot any other dusty old Nazis, don't try them for their war crimes. They were just following orders.
He was a good guy.
He was a good guy.
They were good men.
There are some historical differences, but I will say that like it is worth taking into account that I think that maybe American cinema needs to think about the way it depicts that particular genocide a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because this whole movie was basically like, you know what? Some of them are good. Did you know that? And you're like, Jesus Christ.
Essentially, that's this movie's, and sadly, like I think it was the National Congress of American Indians. They actually said they like appreciated the way they were depicted because they're used to so little.
Yeah.
Because that's really what the movie does. Like, well, some of them were good, and actually, I shouldn't go that far. I think it's well known right now that in America that there was a genocide of the Native Americans, although they are starting to take that out of history books. That's a side note. Anyway, but it's worth taking into account that like, all right, this is a movie that stars the main character of it is a guy who has participated in genocide. And I'm not saying that you can't depict a story like that. I'm just saying, well,
and I'm not even saying
think
that you
about
need to,
what it would be like if you depicted a story about like a reformed Nazi. You know what I mean? Like I'm not saying you absolutely can't, but just calibrate. Think about what the weight of that is. Because like there aren't that many stories about just Native American people. I mean, there's like a couple. There's Dances with Wolves because it stars a white guy. But there aren't that many stories just about like, oh, well, it's just Native American people fighting back in a losing war. There aren't many stories of that, and that's the thing is we always depict the other side, and it's like imagine if media and literature about the Holocaust was treated in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if it was the occasional story about Jewish people surviving it, but mostly stories about Nazis that felt bad. Like imagine if that's how we did it.
Yeah.
This
And I know
podcast took a turn.
It's not really dark.
It took a real hard turn.
Yeah, but
he's not wrong.
He's not.
I know he's not wrong. I'm not saying. I'm just trying to lighten the mood.
Nah.
It's true. We need
Back
that.
to the Holocaust.
Yeah.
We need that.
No.
And I understand there were historical, like there was, it was a little bit more drawn out, but ultimately it was.
Both sides, guys.
Guys, they're good. It's like guys,
Heroes on
in
both
the words of George Lucas, there are heroes on both sides.
Can we just unplug the mic? And
George Lucas Trump.
Oh my god.
All right. But yeah, Rosamund Pike is pretty.
Yes.
Is that
Wolf. Do we need to?
It could just be.
I'm
me.
trying to lighten the mood, Zane.
The logistics of the ending too. Like I found myself whenever they were doing that train scene, I was trying to figure out like, okay, so did they go to like their homeland and they're like, oh hey, just the kid survived. We're taking him though. Is that cool?
No, they went to Chicago.
But I was like, oh, like so they just abandoned the mission? Is that what happens? Like I
No.
don't think the movie really.
No.
What are you asking? Are you
Well,
saying
I
they
think-
should have left the kid there? Or
He's with the
No. I
I thought that they were taking.
You died too, little bear.
I thought they were taking the family to like a reservation. Like
No.
Native
I think you're confused. They're not taking them to like. And I thought this. They're not taking them to like a village or something like
That's
that.
what I thought was.
Well,
that.
yeah, I thought that for a while too, but no, they were just taking the land. He wanted to be buried on that.
Okay. See, and I feel like they didn't explain that well enough because I was very confused.
Yeah.
So like, did they just take this kid and abandon the orders, and now Christian Bale has to be on the run?
The orders were completed, essentially. So the orders were completed.
Yeah.
They were buried there.
He gets his pension. Don't worry, Michael.
So yeah, that was kind of confusing.
He gets his Nazi treasure.
Wow.
Yikes,
That's
guys! I'm dropping some hard.
there's a lot of Nazi talk in this.
I'm dropping some hard.
Yazin is
G's.
always trying to bring up Nazis.
Always trying to talk about Nazis.
It's terrifying.
Yeah. Well,
But
it's cold out there.
well, it's not that cold today. But
No,
yeah.
it's very warm
nice.
for January.
Yeah.
Warm for January.
So anyway, basically in summary, me as a personal big, huge fan of westerns, love them. I was really looking forward to this movie. I was very let down. It's
Would
not.
you recommend it?
No. I could make a laundry list of westerns that I would recommend before this.
All right.
But it's not a terrible movie. If you don't watch a lot of movies, then this one might impress you because
Dan?
Yeah, I liked it more. Not as much as Kemp, but I enjoyed it. It's one of those films I'm probably gonna forget about in a month. It was worth $5 to see on a Thursday evening. It's funny, maybe the reason I enjoyed it is because I didn't see it at the Gateway and had the pretentious trailers beforehand. I had like ones for like the new Clint Eastwood movie where it's about like the soldiers on the train.
Oh, yeah.
You have to save it from the evil Middle Eastern people.
Starring the real people.
Yeah, starting from the actual people. So I guess I was kind of already in that like mindset where
That
it's
12 strong mindset.
yeah,
Oh my
strong
God.
mindset where it's like this isn't going to be a work of art. Like it's just going to be like obviously like what he hasn't said about like its depictions of Native Americans and African Americans in this film is flawed. It is very much coming from a white person that doesn't understand how to portray those, and some of the themes like it deals with a lot of these themes in ways that it doesn't understand, and it comes off as to me unintentionally racist. But again, it tries to go too far in like the negative way and goes the opposite, and then that just makes it look bad in that regard as well. But more than that, it's just a character study of Christian Bale and what war, trauma, and just horrible violence has and takes the toll it takes on people. And if you want to see a deconstruction of that, that might be a little bit too nice of a term for this film. But if you just want to see the effects that it has on people and the people that have engaged in horrific violence from that aspect, I found it interesting.
So, I just saw this film today, so I haven't really got a chance to sit with it that much. When I saw it, it was a good movie. I don't know if I completely recommend it. I lean towards what Dan was saying. Like he said, I probably enjoyed it a little more than him, but not much more. It was fine.
It's hard to say you enjoyed it after the whole Yezin speech we got.
Yeah, that's also the thing. Like, well,
Yeah, I don't want to.
You're not a white supremacist if you enjoyed this.
It doesn't make you a Nazi if you liked hostile.
I just want to like that is just something that I get from these movies. Something I really focus on. It doesn't make you a bad person if you enjoyed it.
I'm just saying, like, after hearing, like, kind of picking it apart, the cracks really start to show in this movie. I think that's a big detriment.
And I think it's a flawed movie, but I don't think it's a bad movie because of that. I think it's an average movie.
Yeah. I think.
See, but I've got to say, not to cut you off and not to undermine you, but like I'm also like really, really interested in seeing like the trauma that people just constantly subjected to violence go through. And I don't think that this movie really like elevates that too much.
I don't think it elevates it. I mean, it tries.
They thought that they were.
It wallows in it. It doesn't elevate it. It wallows in it.
It wallows in it without doing.
I would concur actually with what Kyle said in terms of a recommendation. Honestly, all that social justice warrior shit I just said, those are reasons to see it. If you really want to like see just want to like see something of what not to do in terms of like in terms of being progressive or in terms of like moving forward depictions of indigenous people and the genocide and depiction of the genocide of indigenous people. I think this is like a good litmus test for like what people think is progress, which isn't. The reason I don't recommend it is really more the stuff Kyle just said, is that I think that in terms of being a depiction of what war, being subjected to constant like war and violence, and actually being a perpetrator of that violence, and also what hatred and vengeance do to people, if you're looking for a movie about that, I don't think this is that movie. I think this is a movie about suddenly, miraculously pulling yourself out of that in an unrealistic way. I would say it wallows in it, but only in the sense that it wallows in just talking about those feelings.
It puts it out. It like makes the characters around it and deal with it, but it doesn't do anything with it.
Yeah,
right.
It's funny you should say, but you were kind of right in the movie. Like, kind of just isn't miserable enough for me.
Right.
Yeah.
It wallows in some of those feelings.
It's softcore disaster.
It doesn't wallow in what those feelings would do. Like, I guess there's a quote somewhere like, "Who you are is mostly important because of what it makes you do," and it says, well, this is what these people have been through and this is who they are, but it doesn't make them do anything, so it's not really important. All that's important is what's internal makes a character do externally, and all the characters do externally is actually just kind of noble and good. Mm-hmm. And so it's not interesting.
Yeah.
The characters only do the mission.
The mission.
That's all they do. They only do nice things. They have all these bad feelings and thoughts and impulses, we assume, but they don't do anything about them, so it's not interesting.
I mean, it's the problem with the first half of the movie. Christian Bale's complaining about how much he hates Native Americans, and then you have the scene where he chains them up after the parade. Mm-hmm. And
that's the last time he ever does anything.
And then, that was it.
He's just like, oh,
he was perfectly nice to them the entire time. There was no tension between the characters, really.
Yeah, I mean, one more thing, and you brought this up the other night, one more thing that I would say is like a really perfect encapsulation of how little they are actually focusing on the treatment of the indigenous people.
When they get to the other fort?
They get to a second fort in the middle of the movie, and there's this scene just in the background of them being caged again.
Yeah. They're freed! Like, they're like, we get to another fort, but we don't want them running around here, lock them up.
And they just can't, and they don't focus on this.
I didn't even see that happen.
I barely, it's like they just sort of show it in the back, like, oh, they're being caged again.
Because I was
they don't focus on the fact that these freed people being escorted back to their home, who have been unchained, are just being put in cage. Like, they don't focus on like, oh, see, can they ever really be free? They don't focus on that. It's like, oh, well, they're caged again. It's like maybe they did have that in the movie, but they cut it out.
Yeah. So Zane, would you recommend Hostile?
Having not seen it,
Are you gonna go watch?
You're gonna go watch Hostile.
Am I going to go see it now after this glowing review from the gang at WolfPunch? No.
WolfPunch.